section number 5, and our topic: additional prohibitions related to laundering. Right. A. Hanging up the wet clothing. Right. So again, hanging up the wet clothing. Again, as we said, the problem is muddy sign. Right. I mean, we did not discuss it, but we said this about some last time, that people would suspect that we're doing something wrong. Remember, I gave the example of the mill, water mill, right? So, and people hear that the noise that something is being grinded, right? So even though the person is not there, I mean, it grinds on its own. The water turns the wheel, right? There is a sock for the flour on top, and they put in some container this grain, and it's going to grind by itself. You don't need to be there, right? So a person wants to save some time, let's say, right? But people would suspect that he's doing something on Shabbos, and that's why it is right. It's not allowed it's not allowed right. We should not allow anybody to make noise in our house. For example, some guests and or some people say, I'm not observant, I need to go, like make a phone call, and guess what, they go out of your house, like out of the door, they right after they stand in front of your house and making phone calls. So people would say, I don't know, maybe he also speaks on the phone on Shabbos. How do we know? You understand? Or if like you have a babysitter, right? We said that there is a problematic, but let's say, right, and she wants to do, she's off on Shabbos, and she wants to do her laundry. She wants to vacuum her like room. That's a problem. Should not allow. Why? Again, that the people would suspect that we are doing out ourselves. Okay. So again, our topic: hanging up wet clothing. There is a situation in which a person does a permissible act, but nevertheless gives impression that it's doing something is forbidden. So that's a definition, right? In many of these situations, the sages prohibited doing the permissible act because of appearance of wrongdoing. The prohibition is tormari sign, literally the way the eye sees. The person doing the action may be suspected of wrongdoing by others, and they may consequently think or speak badly of him, and or mistakenly learn from his actions to permit things that are actually forbidden. Right, we're going to explain. Due to the prohibition of mari sign, it is forbidden to hang the wet clothing to dry up on Shabbos, even if clothing become wet accidentally. There is in a rainstorm. One is forbidden to hang up to dry it in a fashion in which laundered clothing is hung, because onlookers might suspect that the person washed the garments on Shabbos. This prohibition applies to garments that are saturated to the degree that if the person touches them and then touches another object, he will transfer the moisture to the other object. So, right, so it's a lot of information. So let's start from the beginning. We're going to explain. So this mari sign. So he gives the definition of mari sign. So you doing something permissible, but people can suspect that you're doing something wrong. And another example that that we discussed in the Shabbos kitchen class, we said even though you have a blech, right, you have a stove, right, and you cover it with blech, preferably to put inverted vessel on top, and only on top you put something to warm up. Why? Because people would come to your house and they see you warming up. They would not understand why do you need blech. Of course, like maybe it's your way of preference. Maybe it's going to be hotter. Maybe this, maybe that. But when you have you have a fire covered with blech, then inverted vessel, and then on top of that vessel you put a container or pot, whatever you need to warm up, for sure. Everybody said that you're not cooking. So that's a mari sign. So even though you don't do anything forbidden, but for the onlooker, especially if they are not so knowledgeable, they might think that it is permitted, right? Permitted, like, and they draw wrong conclusions, and right, or they would suspect that person is doing something wrong and think bad about them, right? So especially in the people when not knowledgeable, they want to learn, and in their eyes you're a very religious person, so they would draw the wrong conclusion, and they would not bother to ask. There is a problem. Some people do not ask; they just look, and they register something in their mind. You can see in their eyes, and that's it. They do not ask. But you have to explain yourself, right? So be very careful not to confuse people. Due to the prohibition of Mari sign, it is forbidden to have wet clothing to drive out on Shabbos. So especially we're saying like outside, if you have a clothing line. If you have like in a bathroom, you have a hook, or you have a like line, like in your shower, right? Some people have like to dry, you put it on a hanger, put it there. There is no problem. Nobody's going to see it. But outside is as we understand, problematic, right? Clothing, so dry. Even if clothing became wet accidentally, so meaning what? That everybody knows it was rain Friday night, right? You might think, right? So that's when I got wet. Guess what? Not everybody goes to shul Friday night. I mean, if they see inside of the house, they already forgot that it was rain. Yeah, you know that it was rain because you got wet, but maybe they don't, right? So and these people would suspect that you did laundry on Shabbos, and now you just put it 5 minutes ago. Understand? Even though it was like from a long time ago. Okay. So again, the one is forbidden to hang up to dry in a fashion that in which laundry clothing is hung, meaning that because onlooker might suspect that the person washed the garments on Shabbos. So like how it's hanged, like nicely, neatly, right? Because you care that it would dry correctly, right? So you would not need to do a lot of ironing. So that's how you put it on dry clothing line. Okay. This prohibition applies to a garment that is saturated to a degree that a person touches them and touches another object that will transfer the moisture to another object, right? So meaning from one place to another, meaning it was very, very wet. So the way I understand, I mean, he does not explain, meaning that it's going to dry for a very long time, right? Okay, so if it was just a little wet, so meaning it's visible. So in another, like I just using my logic, I'm not sure if he's going to say, but just logically, it is like if you look at something on a clothing line, so like you can tell like whether it's very wet or it's not wet, right? Right. So 1 second. Okay. So if it's very wet, so for sure they would say he did laundry. Okay. So which is a problem. So continue. The next part, limits to this prohibition. The prohibition of hanging up the wet clothing applies to hanging in an area where laundered clothing are normally hung to dry. This includes the outdoor clotheslines, indoor clothes rack, laundry room or bathroom. The prohibition does not apply, however, to hanging wet clothing in an area not specifically used for hanging freshly laundered clothing to dry. Thus, it is permitted to hang wet clothing in a closet where the dry clothing is normally hung. I mean, that would be a problem, right? You can get a problem when like introducing a lot of moisture in that closet, especially if a person closes the door, right? It is also permissible to hang wet towel or article of clothing over the back of the chair. So meaning nobody dries like that. Furthermore, it is permitted to hang wet clothing in an area normally reserved for drying laundry if it is hung in a manner that is unusual for laundry. For example, a garment or a towel may hang in a crumpled shape, since this will make the obvious that it was not laundered. Similarly, it is permissible to hang up a wet article that is visibly dry in an area normally reserved for drying clean laundry. Okay. So let's do this piece. Okay. So you see, yes, there are many exceptions. Okay. So again, limit to this prohibition. The prohibition of hanging up the clothing applies to hanging in the area where laundry clothing normally is dry, right? So meaning where people usually, I mean, today, I'm not sure, like some people where we live, some people came from some countries, and they, they started the drying like clothing like outside. Yeah, everybody were doing, I don't know, many years ago, maybe 40, 50 years ago, right? But today, most of the people, because of the preserve privacy, like they would dry their clothing in the dryer. That's why you need a dryer for, right? Today, what I'm trying to say, today the situation is a little changed. So meaning that people usually don't do laundry like and then put up for drying on a clotheslines. Okay. This includes the outdoor clotheslines. I mean, most of the people, at least where we live, don't have. Indoor clothes rack, laundry room and bathroom, right? Indoor clothes rack. Okay, so these are like extendable things, right? So there's some people use it. I saw it, right? Laundry room, okay, or bathroom. Okay, so that's where people, again, if you have somebody from outside, if you have only your family, there is no problem. If you're going to have guests, for sure it could be problematic. The prohibition does not. So okay. In this, again, wet clothing in special rooms, okay, not allowed. The prohibition does not apply, however, to hanging wet clothing in the area not specifically used for hanging freshly laundered clothing to dry. For example, as you say, you have a kitchen chair, and you put it on the back of the chair, right? So which is nobody doing this, and right, a closet. I'm not sure. Right. Usually these things, for example, when a person got caught in the rain, and if it's a jacket, for example, men's jacket, you're not going to put it like you're not going to launder it. So for sure, like if you're going to try to launder your jacket, you can throw it out. You cannot restore it. So we do dry cleaning. So meaning if you put it, but if it gets wet, it's going to dry, no problem. So meaning if you put it on this clothing line, for example, this jacket. So all of the normal people understand that you get caught in rain. It's not like you launder this jacket, and that doesn't matter. I think what material it's made of. I mean, whether it's like wool or a synthetic material, and you can ruin it like very simple, very simple. So nobody would put it in their like normal mind into the washer. Okay. So what I'm trying to say, for sure, people would understand that you get caught in the rain or spill something on yourself. So, but spill something on yourself, again, there is no problem, right? We said one of the conditions. We said that the garment saturated so much, like majority of the garment is saturated. But if it's a small spot, nobody is going to wring. There's nothing to wring. Okay. Right. Just 1 second. Again, thus it is permitted to hang the wet clothes in a closet, right? I mean, not recommended because you can introduce mold in there. That's my personal comment. Right? Closet where the dry clothing are normally hung. Okay. It is also permissible to hang the wet towel or the article of clothing in the back of the chair. So nobody is drying like that. Okay. Furthermore, it is permissible to hang the wet clothing in the area normally reserved for drying laundry, if they hang in a manner that unusually for laundry. So I mean, when you want to dry an article, so you try to make it as straight as possible and spread as much as possible, so it, like more air has access to it, so it's going to dry faster. That's normally what you do. So meaning that if a person put this in a crumbled manner, so for sure he's not or she does not care about crumpled, right? Dry fast or dried at all. So like sometimes when the something wet, you just put there. I think I don't know why I have this example. But I have this example when you go to mikvah, right? I'm talking about men's mikvah. So you use your towel, you just leave it there. You don't put it nicely because anyway they're going to do laundry. Okay, so you don't care as much. Okay, laundry. Similarly, it is permissible to hang up the wet articles that visibly dry, right, in an area normally reserved for drying clean laundry. Okay, so meaning it's visibly dry. So how do you know? Like maybe the wind is swinging back and forth because like you can see that it is normally dry. It is almost dry. So next piece, let me just quickly see how. No, we're not going to finish, but okay, but we continue. Articles that are normally dry clean. Oh, here we go. Some poskim rule that preceding prohibition does not apply even items that are normally dry clean. For example, coat suits. So normal person would wash the jacket like from men's suit or pants. Like just if you want to throw out, just throw out. Don't waste water because you do that. That's it. You cannot restore them. Right. If they become soaked, one may hang them in the area normally reserved for drying laundry, since nobody will suspect that the person hanging washed them with water. Right. So I mean, it got wet from the water, but it was not intentional. So again, as we said, but you can understand this logically. So right, all of the things that normally dry clean, nobody's going to wash, and plus like overcoats, for sure no normal person is going to wash overcoat. Most probably it got caught in the rain and you just drying.